This is episode number 179. I'm talking about how to make more money with your blog or podcast. I've got 4 questions you should be asking yourself. That's coming up on Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. How to take your idea and make a name for yourself within your industry and beyond. Spread your message. Attract a following. Rise above the noise. Here's your host, David Hooper.
Before I get started, I want to do a quick casting call. If you've listened to Red Podcast, read my blog, you know that I'm working on a podcasting book specifically about how to market yourself via podcasting. If you have a podcast, if you've been on podcast, if you have anything to do with podcasting and you have something interesting that you think would make a good story for this book, I would love to hear from you. You can reach out to me personally via the website redpodcast.com. Also, if you have something of interest that you would like to see in the book, let me know that too. Redpodcast.com is how to get in touch with me. This is the Red Podcast. The Red Podcast is the marketing podcast for influencers. That means if you're a blogger, a podcaster, speaker, marketer, a nonfiction author, you're an entrepreneur, this is the podcast for you. Here's what I talk about: book publishing, podcasting, speaking, and other marketing elements of your business that you must master to make a name for yourself. I've been doing this for over 20 years in the entertainment industry: music, film, television, comedy. Now I'm doing it with entrepreneurs. If you want to take your idea, make a name for yourself, and make money, you're in the right place. This episode is about how to make more money with your blog or podcast. You should have at least one of those, if not both. I've got 4 questions to ask yourself if you're looking to change your podcast, change your blog into a money-making enterprise. Most blogs online, they don't make money. Most podcasts, they don't make money. Sometimes it's a promotional tool to get somebody from a podcast, from a blog, wherever they're introduced to you, to something else. So if you have a blog, you've got a podcast, and you want to make money, here are 4 questions to ask yourself. Number 1, do you have an offer? There's something that I call the empty store, and this is seen a lot when it comes to both blogs and podcasts. The podcast, a blog that just exists. It's more of a hobby, or sometimes we call it a jobby, rather than a real business. Do you have an offer? Or are you just putting out content hoping that that content is going to later lead to something? This applies to you. You want to know where to start. You don't have a big product. You don't have a big service that you can offer. You still need to sell something. Have some kind of offer to get people used to paying you money. Small is 10 times better than free. And here's why. If people start to see you as the good guy who's just giving information away for free out of the kindness of your heart. And we see this a lot in online marketing especially. They call it pushing the free line, giving people free content that is much better than somebody else's paid content. And I think that that's great. But if people start to see you as Robin Hood who just gives away free content, and if you're using this give and give and give and I give and give as your marketing message, that's going to turn around and bite you in the ass, because people start to look at you as that Robin Hood type figure. So let's say you've got Robin Hood. He's stealing from the rich, giving to the poor. He's not stealing from the rich and selling to the poor at a less expensive rate. When you see a family member, your mother, wife, husband, brother, sister, think about those intimate conversations that you have. Maybe you've just been through something traumatic. Mother comes over, as only a mother can, and she listens to you, and she lets you know it's going to be okay. Now, wouldn't that be weird if she looks at her clock and she said, "Oh, your 50 minutes is up. Let's get you scheduled for next week. Here's the bill." That's weird. That's a different kind of relationship that you have with your mother, brother, girlfriend, wife, husband, family member than you do with somebody that you do business with. You do not want to be known as family to the people that you're hoping to make money from. Once you become known as family, they're not going to pay you money because it feels weird. It's kind of like being in the friend zone with a woman. Men know this. Once you get into the friend zone with a woman, she's not going to date you. You're her friend. So don't get into the friend zone, or in this case, the family zone, with the people that you're hoping to give you money, because that doesn't work out. It's changing the fundamentals of the relationship that you're establishing. Therefore, as soon as possible, start establishing it so that they're giving you some kind of money. A $10 ebook? Perfect. $20 ebook? Perfect. Make them pay you a little bit of something, though, or else you're going to get stuck and never, ever be able to get out of that. Question number 2, on your blog, on your podcast, who are you targeting? Hopefully you've got some idea of this, but there's a follow-up question. Does your content match who you're targeting? The big problem that I see with a lot of blogs, a lot of podcasts, is that the people running them, the people behind the mic, behind the keyboard, they've never been where their customers are. It's a huge problem. They have no idea who their audience is. And I don't mean who they're targeting. I mean who their audience is, what they really like to do, what their problems are, what keeps them up at night. These bloggers, these podcasters, because they've never been in that same situation, not really, they just talk about it, just give advice. They don't know who these people really are. Even if they do, sometimes we have holes in our perception. What I call the cool selfie problem. You've probably been in one of these situations where you're feeling really great. Hey, yeah, let's take a selfie. That sounds like a great idea. Then you look like an idiot in it. Or been in this situation where you think you look so cool dancing at the wedding. Well, maybe you didn't. We have holes in our perception, and it comes from various things. Maybe if it's at that wedding you're dancing, maybe you've had too much to drink. Who knows what it is? That's something for you to look at. One of the things that it could be is that you're not getting into the minds of your audience, or you've never been where your audience is. One of the things that I suggest people do, and I do this for every single book that I start, I will get on the phone with people and I will have a 1-hour conversation, 1-hour consultation where I'll get to know them, get into their problems, figure out what is keeping them up at night, and then put that into the book. I'll do this 20, 30 times, even if I've been in the market before. That's what I did with my last book, Six Figure Musician. It's a book specifically for musicians. I've been a musician since I was a kid. First studio session that I did, I was about 5 years old. Did a kids album. That is how entrenched in the music industry that I was. The last 20 years, I've been helping musicians to sell more records, get more people to their shows, make more money within the industry. I've worked as a musician. I grew up in Nashville. I've got relatives that are musicians. I was in the business, but I still get on the phone and had these conversations. The new podcasting book, the one I mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, one, I've got a podcast. This episode is number 179, but we've actually got about 15 episodes beyond this that don't even have numbers. They come out as special episodes. I've got dozens of radio programs that I've done. I've got other podcasts that I've started. And I get on the phone and I talk to people. I go to events like Podcast Movement, New Media Expo, podcast meetups. Get to know people that way. That is how you get in touch with an audience, by connecting with them and by doing what the audience does. We're always going to have holes in our perception, but the deeper you dive in, the fewer those holes are going to be. Question number 3. If you've got a blog, you've got a podcast, and you want to monetize it, do the numbers work? How much money do you need from this blog or this podcast? That's the first sub-question to ask yourself. How much money do you want? Let's say 10 grand. You want 10 grand a month from your blog, 10 grand a month from your podcast, or some kind of combination. Now you've got a goal. Next question. How much traffic do you have now? How many people are listening to your podcast? How many people are visiting your blog? How much time do you have to work on this $10,000 goal? Then you have to ask yourself, well, if my goal is $10,000, and this is the traffic that I have now, this is how many people are listening to my podcast, how many people are reading my blog, what will it take to make this money? Let's say you've got 100 core listeners to your podcast. Let's say that you have 100 core readers to your blog. You want to make $10,000 a month? There are a lot of ways to do that. You got 100 people, you need $10,000, have you $100 each a month? That's probably not going to happen. But maybe you could get 20 of them, 1/5 of them, to give you $500 a month. Or maybe 10 of them to give you $1,000 a month. Maybe it's 2 people, each giving you $5,000 a month. Or maybe just one footing the entire $10,000. What kind of value can you provide to these people so they would be willing to give you that money and make the numbers work financially and with the traffic that you've got? That's something that I would suggest that you do right now. Come up with 3 or 4 different scenarios. Maybe one where one person is providing everything that you need, and then start dividing that up. 10 people, surely you can get 10 people to buy what you're selling, right? 25 people, 50 people, maybe you've got 500 people available to you. 500 people that will give you some kind of money to do something. What is that thing? Do the numbers work? That's question number 3. The final big question, question number 4. If you've got a blog, you've got a podcast, and you want to monetize it, what are you willing to do? What kind of money are you willing to spend for the tools, the research, the manpower? What do you need to outsource so this can be done? To travel? Maybe you need to hop on a plane, go see that guy that you want to pay you $10,000 a month, because he's probably not going to do it via an email. Might not do it via a phone call. You might have to actually go see him to get that kind of money. What kind of money are you willing to put into this? You also have to ask yourself, what kind of time are you willing to put into it? Certainly, you're going to have to learn new skills. But this business that we're in, the influence business, books, blogs, selling information, it doesn't just happen. I saw an interesting article with John Lee Dumas, and this is very quick. I thought it was funny, though. They were making it sound like it wasn't so quick. It talked about how he was podcasting daily, 365 episodes per year. And about the 13th month, that's when sponsorship started coming in. Now, that's daily. That's 365 podcast episodes. And he made this happen very quickly, in my opinion. 13 months, that's nothing. I know guys that are in this business 10 years before anything happens to them. That's a lot more common. And 365 episodes is a lot. Like I mentioned, we've got almost 200 episodes of Red Podcast. 18 months we've been doing this. So I'm about half of what John Lee Dumas was within a year. How many podcasts do you have? How many blog posts do you have? Most people that I know in this business, they have what I call a hockey stick. When it comes to their money, their influence, it's flatlining, 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 and then whoop, shoots up. Stratospheric. Earl Nightingale talked about this in The Strangest Secret, Lead the Field. He's talked about it a lot, actually. How most men, and this includes women, don't start making money till they're in their 40s. And that's starting in their 20s. They've got a good 20 years in before they really start seeing money. They can make more money in that 5 or 10 years than if you took every single year that they've worked and combined it. That's how powerful this is. So what are you willing to do? How much money are you willing to put in? What kind of time are you willing to put in? If you're not willing to put in the time that it takes, not willing to put in the money that it takes, the goal that you said you wanted may not be for you. Then it's time for you to reevaluate. A lot of people say that they want this, but very few people actually do, because the outside, what we think that we're getting into, is completely different from the inside. But if you're willing to do the work, the inside is possible, and this is how to do it. Here are those questions again. Do you have an offer Don't have an empty store. This isn't friends, this is business. You don't want your clients, your customers, or the people that you hope will be clients and customers to think of you as family. Think of you as somebody who's not charging for something. Who are you targeting? And does your content match this? Do you know who you're targeting? Have you been there? If you haven't, maybe you need to dive in the trenches a little bit more. Actually get in there, find out what these people want through firsthand experience. Question number 3, do the numbers work? Figure out how much money that you need, and then with the traffic that you've got now, find out a way to come up with those numbers. Find out a way to come up with that money. And finally, are you willing to do the work? This takes time. This takes effort. It takes commitment. Do you really want this? If you don't just half-ass it, hoping that you're going to get lucky, just fall into it. Even if you do get lucky, it's like winning the lottery. Maybe you'll have some short-term success, but you're not going to be able to keep it up. It takes effort to keep it up. It's actually pretty easy to make a lot of money. It's a lot more difficult to hold on to it, though. When we're talking about fame, influence, that's 10 times harder. Easy to get famous, difficult for prolonged fame. On the next episode, Red Podcast number 180, I'm going to talk about narcissism and egotism. Are you a narcissist? Are you working with narcissists? I've got a test that will let you know. If you've got questions, you've got comments, reach out to me, redpodcast.com. Again, I'm finishing up on my new book. It's about how to market yourself via podcasting. If you've got podcasting stories, something that has happened to you because of a podcast, if you're doing something cool with podcasting, or if you're interested in marketing via podcasting and you've got something that you feel that I need to get in the book and you want to make certain that it gets included, reach out. Redpodcast.com is the way to do that. You know, you can subscribe to Red Podcast there. Android, iPhone, however you listen to podcasts, subscribe with one click. Redpodcast.com is how to do that. Thank you so much for helping me build the Red Podcast community. If you've got friends that are looking to spread their messages, I would love to help them out too. Let them know. Redpodcast.com is where to find this podcast. Every single episode, every week, sometimes multiple times a week. Redpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next episode. We'll talk about narcissism and egotism. That's next on the next episode of Red Podcast.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.